All right, let's talk solar power. When you hear that, what pops into your head? Probably sleek, modern panels, right? Cutting edge stuff. But what if I told you the whole story? It didn't start in some high-tech lab. Nope. It started way back in the ancient world. Today, we're diving into the long and honestly pretty brilliant history of solar.
So let me ask you, how old do you think this tech actually is? Are we talking a few decades? Maybe a century? Well, get ready because the real answer is way older than you're probably guessing.
Believe it or not, this story kicks off all the way back in the 7th century BC. We're talking simple magnifying glasses used to start fires. I mean, that's harnessing the sun's power, right? Then, jump forward a few hundred years, and you've got the Greeks and Romans using these big polished mirrors to light ceremonial lanterns. They'd even figured out how to design their public baths with massive south-facing windows just to trap the sun's heat. That's passive solar design, and we're still using that basic idea today. And look, these aren't just quirky historical facts. What they show us is that for thousands of years, people have looked up at the sun and recognized its immense potential. It was never just about staying warm. It was about trying to capture its power. Okay, probably the most famous or infamous tale is the legend of Archimedes and his solar death ray. Yeah, you heard that right. The story goes that he used these massive polished bronze shields to focus sunlight and literally set fire to Roman ships attacking his city. Now, is it true? Probably just a myth. But, and this is the cool part, in the 1970s, some scientists actually put it to the test. And guess what? They successfully set a wooden ship on fire from 50 meters away using just reflected sunlight. So maybe not so much a myth after all. All right, so we're going to jump from ancient legends and death rays to the dawn of a whole new era. Because to really unlock the sun's power, we had to go beyond just concentrating its heat. We had to figure out how to make electricity directly from its light. And that, my friends, required a massive scientific leap. And at the very heart of all of this is one core scientific principle, the photovoltaic effect. It sounds complicated, but it's this almost magical process of creating an electric current just by shining light on something. Seriously, that's it. And that one discovery, well, it's the foundation of every single solar panel on the planet. Now, this wasn't some single eureka moment. It was more like a scientific relay race. It all started back in 1839 when a guy named Edmund Becquerel first noticed the effect. Then the baton was passed to Willoughby Smith, who found that a material called selenium was a photoconductor. That led Charles Fritz to build the very first working solar cell in 1883. But the real game changer, the moment everything clicked, was in 1954. That's when Bell Labs developed the first practical silicon solar cell. And that is the direct ancestor of the panels we see everywhere today.
So how in the world does this actually work? Let's break it down super simple. Sunlight, right? It's made of these tiny little packets of energy called photons. Step 1, these photons smack into the solar cell. Step 2, they hit with enough energy to literally knock electrons loose from their atoms. And step 3, all these newly freed electrons start flowing in the same direction. And what is a flow of electrons? It's an electric current. It is a beautifully simple, direct conversion of light into electricity. No moving parts, just physics doing its thing.
Okay, so the science was solid, but the tech itself? It was crazy expensive and not very efficient. It was basically a lab curiosity. So it took two major global events to drag solar power out of the lab and into the real world: the space race and a huge energy crisis right here on Earth. Space. That became solar's first killer app. Back in 1958, the Vanguard I satellite was launched, and it was powered by 6 tiny solar cells. Think about it. Batteries would die in a few days or weeks, but solar, it just kept on going, providing a continuous, reliable stream of power for years. It proved its worth in literally the most hostile environment we could throw at it. And here's the amazing part. That exact same fundamental technology, the stuff that was proven out in the cold vacuum of space, is what you now see on rooftops all over your neighborhood. It's a straight line from the final frontier right to our front doors.
So the second big push came from the oil crisis in the 1970s. All of a sudden, gas lines were long, prices were high, and energy independence became this huge national priority. President Jimmy Carter even had solar panels installed on the White House as his big symbol of the future. Now, the tech was still way too expensive for most people, but the idea of solar power, that had finally firmly taken root in the public mind. But maybe the single most important chapter in the entire solar story is the revolution in cost. Because For solar to really change the world, it couldn't just be for satellites and presidents. It had to be affordable for everyone. And the numbers behind this transformation, they're just staggering. So let's go back to the 1950s. The first commercial solar cells hit the market. And the cost? Get this, about $300 to generate a single watt of electricity. $300 per watt. At that price, it was a toy for satellites and maybe a few eccentric millionaires. But that's it. And today? What does it cost today? Well, thanks to decades of innovation, economies of scale, mass production, the cost has absolutely plummeted. We're talking less than 50 cents per watt. That is a price drop of over 99%. This incredible economic shift is the single biggest reason we're seeing a global solar boom right now.
Okay, so affordability? Check, we solved that. The focus then shifted to innovation, making them better and better. But here's something you might not know. Not all solar panels are the same. The technology has actually evolved into 3 distinct generations.
So, what are we even talking about when we say a generation? It's pretty simple, really. It's just a way to group solar cells based on the materials they're made of and how they're actually built. Each generation is basically a different answer to the same question: what's the best way to turn sunlight into electricity? So here are the 3 main families. First gen is the classic stuff, the workhorse of the industry. It's that wafer-based silicon you see pretty much everywhere. Second gen is what we call thin film technology. It's cheaper, it's more flexible. And then you have the third generation. And this is where things get really exciting. We're talking about emerging tech like perovskites and quantum dots, which promise way higher efficiencies and could open up totally new ways to use solar. But here's the reality check. Despite all the cool new research, it's that old-school first-generation crystalline silicon, the direct descendant of those 1954 Bell Labs cells, that still completely dominates the market. I mean, it makes up 95% of all solar panels produced today. It's the king, and for good reason. It's reliable, and it works. So, where do we go from here? The solar revolution is definitely in full swing, but scientists are already pushing the envelope, trying to tackle the fundamental physical limits of the technology itself. And that brings us to something called the Shockley-Queisser limit. Now, stick with me here. Think of it as a speed limit, a theoretical top speed for any standard solar cell made from a single material. For silicon, that maximum efficiency is just under 30%. And since our best cells are already getting really close to that limit, the next big leap in performance has to come from a totally new approach. And here is how we're going to break that speed limit. Researchers are creating what are called multi-junction cells, where they stack different materials on top of each other to capture more of the light spectrum. They're developing incredible new materials like perovskites that can be layered right on top of silicon to give it a major efficiency boost. And they're creating flexible, even transparent cells that you could integrate into windows, cars, maybe even your jacket. The future of solar isn't just on the roof, it's literally everywhere. And just to understand why all of this matters so much, think about this fact. The sun showers our planet with more energy in just 4 hours than the entire human race consumes in all forms in an entire year. The scale of that opportunity is it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. We have this virtually limitless source of clean power just waiting for us. So from ancient magnifying glasses to satellites whipping around the Earth, the story of solar is really a story about human ingenuity, about us never stop trying to solve a problem. We've proved the technology works. We've made it affordable. So the question now isn't if we can capture the sun's incredible power. The real question is, how are we going to do it?